Alrighty, I think everything's working. Everyone good?
Rolling.
Super good.
Very strange that I have a large nose, and I'll tell you why.
I guess you're privileged to have a big nose then, because you don't live in harsh conditions.
The habanero one? Holy fuck, dude. Woo! You know, maybe I've been treating this bike as some sort of parkour bike when really it's just a...
I once came face to face with a wild rhinoceros. That was pretty crazy.
I got stung by a bee once.
Well, welcome back, everybody.
Oh, sorry.
To the Burning Boat Show. We have a returning guest, Esben. If you guys don't remember, he was on the podcast, I believe, like 4 months ago in September. And Esben is a climber, climbing instructor, yoga instructor, mental coach. Go back and listen to that episode. That was definitely very good. But you're the first, I'd say, I want to say real guest, because we've had other people returning, but they were like your friends who came and visited and were here anyways.
Yeah, I mean,
So
we had
you're like
Casper. But I guess
no,
you
I
worked
said
before.
first returning guest.
I see. Yeah.
Which is exciting. Returning guest. So thanks for coming back.
Thank you for inviting me.
We
again.
love having you, yeah.
Love being
Always
here.
an interesting conversation.
It is. It is.
It's Christmas time.
It is.
What do you do for Christmas? Do you stay in Copenhagen?
This year, yes, actually. I was supposed to be in Spain, but of different reasons, I wasn't going. So I'm staying here, and yeah, looking forward to it.
What do you normally, when you say Spain, you mean climbing, right?
Yeah.
Because you were going to go at one point.
Yeah.
And then...
my son's school, and I had some work that took longer than I thought, and it just became a little complicated, and then we agreed to go in February instead, and then we're going again in April. So stay home now, and I also wanted to work with some things with myself. So and sometimes that seems easier, escaping out into nature and climbing, but I think I need to look more into this. So it's super cool being here.
Like what? What are you looking into?
Just habits, ways of living. I do that sometimes, but there's been a lot of stuff lately. Both my kids are teenagers, and that's changed a lot. Usually it's been like, we're going climbing now, and then we're going eating there, and tomorrow we're doing this, and that was it. And now I'm like, tomorrow we're doing, no, I'm not, because I'm going there. And the other one is like, I'm not even here, and so on. So just like a lot of time without kids suddenly.
Yeah.
That I need to figure out what I want to spend that on. Then my mom is really old and starting really to forget a lot of things. So I'm been a lot to the hospital with her. And helping her in different ways. So that takes some time figuring out how I want to round it up with her. It's no secret that I didn't have much family. My mom was there, but our relationship has been very varied over the years. So wanna round that up in a good way for both of us, and at least for me to keep on being here and letting go of stuff. And then just like I say, sometimes I try to think about habits. We have a tendency of doing things, and then suddenly we've been doing it for a lot of years, and just looking into what I can do and how. And then it's been a long time since I've had a fast. Yeah. And I try once a week to have a day where I don't eat. And have a break in that way. But I haven't done it for some days, and I'm thinking about doing that and a silent retreat over New Year's. So I borrowed a summerhouse and going to go up there for 5-6 days and just shut up and not eating. And
How long do you not eat for then?
I don't know yet, but at least at least 3 days I won't eat.
Oh man,
it's good for you.
Yeah. So what, do you just drink water, or do you get coffee as well?
No
tea?
Stimulants, no tea, no sugar, no coffee, no candy, no nothing. I've done different styles. Like when I was a little younger, it was just hardcore, straight on, nothing in, nothing out almost. But it could also like be just, for example, with rice or quinoa, but then just no salt and pepper and all these things. So just that. Or it could be juicing. Sometimes it's been just fasting a few days and then maybe having some juice on a day and then fasting a few days again. So I've tried a lot. There's a lot of truth out there again, but I think it's individual. I think there's some really good things that everybody would have a good experience with, but I think there's a lot of stuff out there that somebody it's going to work for and somebody it's not. So for me, it's just my overall feeling of how I'm living my life, and it also clears my mind sometimes to do that. So
I've heard a bit about fasting because I wanted to try it at one point, and I think it sounds like there's a lot of different things that people are saying, that it's very individual. Someone might react very strongly to it specifically on like the first day and then kind of settle into it, whereas other people will just kind of keep feeling tired and crappy. And that I've heard something about like to ease into it is a smart way. Is that something that is true? That where you wouldn't just stop eating immediately. You would, on the day that you start, you would have a very small meal, and then maybe later on you'd have, well, you said no coffee, but let's say you had coffee but like with a little bit of coconut oil or something in it, and then that way you kind of taper off rather than like shut off your body immediately.
It's always good to like go slow in and go slow out. So it's like any other practice, if you ask me. You go slow in,
makes sense.
You have a period where you're all in, and then you have slow out again. So it's a warm up, it's the training, and it's a warm down.
So is it like more of like a mental thing or a physical thing? The reason why you do it, I mean.
I think both this time, but it depends on what I want to work on. So it can be mental, it can be physical, but it can also be both, or it always is both. It's just where you put your focus, I think.
Right.
But I think if I would recommend anybody to do anything, is like, first of all, figure out why would you do it.
Right.
There's no reason for it if you don't find it.
Yeah.
There is some health things about it, but most people would make it fine without. So if people ask me, I would normally say I would start doing just like once a week, just do one day, maybe even start once a month with just one day.
Yeah.
But I think it's good once a week. But I don't know. I just spend a lot of time. Food have never interested me super much, even though I really love food. How
does that work?
Yeah, it's just something that it's not been important. It's been important to get what I need to, but usually, often I come home with, like when the kids were smaller, we came home like maybe 8:30 or something like that, and I wouldn't spend 1 hour or 2 hours making food. So I'm really good at making simple food very fast.
Right.
So in that way. So it's more about the time and how my life is, that I'm not home at 6 and making dinner and we're sitting at a table eating. We eat whenever it works.
So if you fast for one day, does that mean you'd get up and you wouldn't eat anything? Do you then eat in the evening, or do you wait until the next? Is it 24 hours or is it like a day?
Again, it's different. It could be both. Usually I do, like the day before, I just have a big lunch, or a okay, good dinner.
Yeah.
And then I fast from then on. So I start there, but in the morning, and then I go all the day till next morning.
Okay.
But usually I'm not very hungry when I wake up after a fast. So usually it always becomes like 1.5 day, because then I eat like later up in the morning. So, and that's something I also want to, like, there's so many things like breakfast for champions. That's the most important meal in the day.
Yeah.
Then you should eat a big lunch and a little less for dinner, for example. If you ask me, I think it's BS. It's just, again, somebody selling something. It's, again, depending on the person. Some people would feel a lot better eating around 11, 12, 1 o'clock. And some people would love eating around maybe 6 or 7. I don't think, again, you can say this is good and everybody just do that and you'll be happy. One thing for you, Mads, and another for you, Tyler, would be like a way to approach it if you ask me. So some weeks I just have one day where I just don't eat anything. I just drink water. But if it seems hard, I would just drink a juice during the day. So I would never like fight for it.
Right.
That's not the point.
So if you feel like you need it, then you kind of
Yeah, but it's super difficult because the mind will say you need it.
So it's like difficult to know when you actually need
I
it
think
and when it's more just like
it's like everything we're going to talk about and we talked about last time. If you ask me, it's like you have to be conscious about it. You have to like tap in and feel, why did I just, like, you go into the supermarket and you buy all these healthy things. Then just before you hit the register, your left hand just snaps out and grabs a chocolate bar, right? It's just something that happens. And that's typical the mind of craving, is that you just let it happen because you're not aware, you're not conscious about it. So you need to figure out, some days it's like when I swim, I swim all year round. And yesterday I jumped in and I was up before I got wet almost.
Right,
It's
you
like and
instantly out.
I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And today I was sitting there 5 minutes and breathing.
Yeah.
And it felt easy.
Yeah.
So I don't really fight for it a day like yesterday. I just accept that it doesn't feel right, and I could breathe myself into it and stay there for sure a few minutes. But instead of that, I just like, it doesn't feel like I don't feel like sitting here and fighting for it. So I just get up and I'm happy I've been out there, and I sat a bit in the sun and then I went home.
So what about someone who does it for the first time and it happens to be a bad time for them, and then they never want to do it again because the first experience was bad, and then they don't get the benefits of it?
I would say they wouldn't have prepared mentally. So it will always be a good experience if you prepare for it, but it will always be a shock and feeling like, oh my God, this is going to be so cold. But if you mentally prepare and you know you can breathe yourself through it, then it won't be a big issue for most people.
Yeah, we jump in after every climbing session on Sundays. We jump in the water. Specifically the place where you took us the first time we filmed together.
Yeah.
That's like our go-to swimming place now.
Yeah, it's super
And
nice.
in the summer we'll actually swim and play
nice,
around
yeah.
and jump in. He learned how to do like a gainer, like a backflip when you like run and then do it backwards. Like I almost learned it. Haven't quite.
We also tried the thing you did where you do a handstand and then
flip over.
It was weirdly scary.
it was so scary to do on the ground, and then it was like easy once we did it off the thing. But in your head you pictured you did it on the grass, and I was like, what if I flip over and like hit my feet against the wall or something? And of course I could just do it, and it was totally fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what a good point in everything I said until now is like, it's so much about our mental game.
Yeah.
Because it's often our thought that limits us in these things, and we're scared about things that not even are scary.
Yeah.
And then other things that should be scary, we are not scared about.
Yeah. Do you have a routine for the fasting, or do you kind of decide on a whim the day before?
I don't know. I try to get better in routines, but in of some reason I'm not really good at it. I try to fast once a week, or at least I only eat once a day.
Often you only eat once a day.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. I think food is overrated in our society. It's a problem for the planet, and it's not good for us as humans. We should get enough, and it depends on how much you move and so on. But we don't need as much food as our system is still. We're so behind in our mind and body compared to where the world is today, and the system is not made for eating every day. We are used to going out, getting something, and then maybe you have a lot in a period of time, and then you have less in other periods. So usually in the winter time, you would have gathered food in because you know there wouldn't be as much you could go out and pick and so on. But now you can go down and you can get strawberries year round. So
I know, that's crazy.
It is crazy.
I feel like I haven't noticed that before until this year. I'm like, normally I swear these things used to go in and out of season, but now they're here all the time.
Exactly.
I would always be like, oh, it's got to be the last time that they're doing strawberries. I got to get some.
Yep.
And then they're still there like month after month.
Exactly. And it's sad because it's like it's not the same experience. I remember when I was a kid and the first Danish strawberries came and you were like, oh my God. And they were so tasty.
Yeah.
And now you get like what do you call it? Ripe.
Yeah.
Not ripe strawberries imported from Brazil or something like that. Yeah. So I think it's something also that should be there in seasons. But anyways, I don't know, not really a system. I try just to find a day. It depends also because sometimes it feels easier if I have a lot of work. Then the day just goes. And if I'm like working at home or having a slow day with yoga, meditation, then it can seem a lot harder because it's so much easier just to go around snacking. But then I like to try to push it and then take a fast on one of those days. And again, I try to make the decision before because it's so easy to. You have those. It's like people that smoke. If it's actually pretty easy not smoking, because it's like it's a peak point where you really want this food or the cigarette, but then if you just leave it, it will disappear, and then 2, 3, 4, 5 hours later, you're like, oh my God, I'm so hungry, and it's the same feeling for people with cigarettes. Is that I have to have it, but then we just grab it, right? So
if you withhold what's the word? If you don't do it, then it just slowly will become less. Yeah. It's not like it'll keep building until. Yeah.
I love starting a lot of my classes if I'm teaching people like over a period, and then say when you meet here, we meet at 9, and you have to be precise because we start with meditation, so you can't disturb. If you come later, then you have to wait.
Yeah.
And then we go on till 4. And in that period of time, we don't eat. Yeah. And I would recommend you not to eat breakfast. And it's almost, some of them almost crying, and some of them are like, then I'm not going to be here. And it's just like, it makes them desperate to think that they're not going to eat from 9 till 4.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so hilarious. And then we have a lunch around 12 because most people want it. But some of them, they take it in and they actually try. And I have never met anybody that hasn't had like, that's stupid, I don't want to, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they try it.
Yeah.
And then they come back and say, it wasn't that hard. Yeah. And I actually felt great the day after.
Yeah.
You see colors more clear. You smell differently. You feel light in a different way. You don't have that, you know that stomach where it's like just a little bulge out just beneath the belly button. And it's like, it's kind of blown a little bit up. Oh, that just normalizes, and it's just a great feeling.
My dad is the kind of guy who he says he cannot do anything without like if he misses a meal by like even half an hour or an hour, he will completely mentally shut down. And he says it's like a physical thing, like he'll start to get all shaky and stuff, but I know that it's so ingrained in him that it happens before he actually feels any hunger. It's just the thought of not having the breakfast.
Exactly.
That gets him so like, well, I can't possibly go for a walk without having breakfast. I'm like, well, you've also never tried. So I'm sure there's a lot of, you just haven't tried. You feel hungry, and then you've had to wait like an hour or 2 hours, and you still feel hungry.
Yeah.
And then you imagine that if you waited longer, it would just continue. But that obviously isn't true.
It is not. It peaks. It's like fear also. Fear peaks and then it goes down again. So it's not that hard. Most, or I would say almost all people I've ever talked to that didn't want to do it and tried it, and then they come back and say it wasn't that bad and it's actually nice. But it's like everything else. Then they do it for a little while and then they stop. So, and that's a big key point in my teachings is that it's the daily work that's the key for everything.
I think we should move on to that, actually. I wanted to know, because I quickly...
Can I finish it up just with a thing that we can actually walk on with?
Yeah.
But I think it's funny because we have a tendency of I think over making everything very difficult and we have to find new ways and bigger ways and smarter ways. And I think often if you just look into nature, then a lot of the answers will come. And usually the answers are very simple. And if you think about, if you, for example, say, okay, food, which people worry a lot about, you can go around 3 months without eating and still surviving. Water, you can go about 3 days and still survive without water. And your breath, you can go, most people not even 3 minutes, but let's say 3 minutes, and then you have a problem. And I think that says a lot about what we should look into.
What order, at least.
Exactly. So maybe we should look more about our breath, think about more of our what we drink, and less about what we eat. But it's such a social thing also, so it's super hard for people. And it's also something, cravings usually come, and if you ask me, a misuse, like if you overuse something, you get addicted. That was what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Most people that get addicted, if you ask me, they get addicted in times where they have a hard time with themselves, they have trouble, they have problems or something like that. Then you take your cupcake and you eat that and you think that makes you feel better. And at some point, the only thing you can take in that's the cupcake. And I think something like that with your dad, it's like, so food is part of his identity and he fills out whatever holes he has with food, if you ask me.
I was saying that I looked through the last podcast we did just to briefly see what things we touched on and where we sometimes digress from what we were talking about. And you mentioned that one thing you never compromise on is your breathing routine in the morning. And you try to get an hour in. And if you can't do that, you at least do 15 minutes. And that you would rather get up early to do it rather than miss it because you feel better. Yes. And I realized that we never actually talked about what that is. Like what does that mean, do your breathing?
A good question, and I think it's at least 3 different phases, but I think the most important is the daily practice that you ask for.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I start before I get out of bed. The first thing I do when I wake up is turn on to my back, and then I just lie there and do deep breathing, diaphragmatic. Through the nose. So maybe 7 in, 7 out, it could be. And just lie there for a while. Sometimes I fall asleep again because it relaxes you.
Really? That's good.
But then sometimes I'm just, it's like, then you wake up because you're like, and then, I'm breathing. I'm trying to wake, and then I just keep going. But that's the first thing I do, at least 3 breaths. Just to... You haven't, even if you're very aware about the breath like I am, when you go to sleep, it's automated. So it just happens, right? So the first thing I can do is oxygenate my blood.
Yeah.
And that's the main reason why it's just a good thing to do in the morning, is because most people sleep with their mouth open, so they breathe through the mouth. So we get rid of a lot of CO2, and you need more oxygen in your blood, so you can oxygenize it, and then you get more energized. So that's the first thing. Then when I've done that, I usually go out and I boil some water, and I make like a glass of with a little bit of lemon, and every morning. And sometimes I put ginger and honey in, depending. But at least lemon. It just starts your digestive system and stuff like that.
Yeah, I used to do a lemon thing too, but I don't remember why.
Because it puts out the first of all, you're dehydrated when you wake up, so you miss oxygen and you're dehydrated. So get some water in. The other thing with the lemon just puts your digestive systems. It gets it started.
Okay.
So it's good in that way. I drink that. I brush my teeth usually, just to feel fresher, and then I go in to my. I have a little gym, and then I just do like. Usually just a joint mobility, just getting the body going, moving the joints in different ways, and just waking up slowly with that 5-10 minutes. And then I go in and breathe and meditate. Sometimes if I have the time, I do yoga before, and then the meditation and the breath work is the last thing I do. So this can take 10 minutes and it can take 1 hour or 2.
And how often does it take longer? Like how often does it take an hour plus?
Right, when I have the time, when I'm not working. I try not to work before 11, okay. But it's not working always because most people that want to be coached is either in the morning, afternoon, evening, weekends.
Yeah.
So, but I try to have my mornings. At least I have a few during the week. I just had 14 days where I was working from like 8:30, and I had to drive for like 45 minutes. So I was up at around 6 o'clock. So that was probably the best days there was like half an hour. Mm-hmm. So it's also like my coaching. I try to give people like they have to like make an agreement with me about an absolute minimum, and that's a must every day. And then you can have like your programs and build onto that. But for me, daily practices with like health, like eating, drinking, you have some routines that you know this I need to go through, then it's okay. I have some movement, this is a minimum, then it's okay. I have meditation and breathing, and then that's okay. So I would say the short day, I would wake up, lie in bed, breathe deeply for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. Then I would go out, make my water with lemon, go down, make joint mobility. So I'm going through the ankles, all the way through the knees, hips.
What were you like stretching, or what do you mean by that?
Yeah, just like kind of. It's hard to explain shortly, but yeah, rotating like the joints out in as far as they can come out, and like slowly, so they just wake up. So all the crunching and the stiffness just like loosens a little. The tissue. I think it was Bruce Lipton that said this. All the issues are in the tissues. So that's one of the reasons we tight up is because we dehydrate in the evening, and then also because a lot of the shit we carry around, if you ask me, is it places itself in the tissue. That's also why people can hurt themselves mentally, and then a lot of years they can get a pain the same, for example, in the back, because it's hidden in the tissues and the body doesn't forget. So we heal, but it doesn't disappear. Then when I've done that, I would go in and I would sit down and I would do some breathing, and then I would meditate while I keep breathing in at maybe 5-10 minutes. So that would be maybe 15-20 minutes altogether. If I have a lot of time, I would wake up the same way, do my joint mobility, but then I would do yoga, natural movement, whatever I feel like that morning. I love the 5 Tibetans, like 5 exercises that run through the whole body. It's very super simple, but it's very effectful. But then I would do yoga, natural movement, whatever, for like 45 minutes, 1 hour, 1.5 hours, and then I would go in and meditate for between half an hour and an hour.
So when you sit down to do the breathing before the meditation, is that just breathing through your nose and then out through the mouth, thinking about it? or is it something more complex?
It could be. I would always start a little more simple, so it wouldn't go deep. But I think that's one of the main things for people that start meditating, and it two things that they say about meditating and breathing is why, and secondly, well, that's easy. And when they tried it, they figure out it's really hard. So I teach these students on a sports academy to go out teaching different kind of sports, and we're working with climbing, yoga, and we're working with mental stuff, breathing, and meditating. And during the year, they work a lot with jumps for gymnasts, soccer, basketball, all these different kind of things, and they have to work really hard at some point to get their education. And afterwards, they usually say the hardest in that year would be sitting down with me, meditating, just being quiet. So it's super hard for people. So I think the main mistake people do is they just sit down and think, now I can start. And they often do it too late, so you're kind of in a hurry. And then you spend like 5-10 minutes just like anxious sitting there and not really knowing what to do. So if I teach people to meditate, the first thing I teach them is to sit down and start breathing. And that would be, like a 7 in and a 7 out. So just a long inhale through the nose and a long exhale through the nose. Then I would look if they can do it diaphragmatic, so they use the stomach. And when they can do that, then I would say do that for like 2, 3, 4 minutes, and then start your meditation. And then keep awareness on the breath. For example, a little more experienced person so that's the first thing I would do. Start being conscious about your breath. So when I was running up the stairs here, I ran one stair on an inhale and an exhale on the next one.
That's good. So
I play a lot with it during the day. Or when I'm driving, I could do like a 5-20-10, for example. So an inhale on 5 and a breath hold on 20, and then an exhale on 10. So there's so many different kind of breathing patterns out there that's related to each other. So if you were more experienced in this, I would say, for example, I love during my morning routine, going in, sit down for the meditation. Then I start with 21 warrior breaths and box breathing for like a few minutes maybe.
What's box breathing?
A warrior breath is like more like a rolling breath. It's the same. A lot of the transformational breathing uses, like when you go deep inside. But if you do it just 21 times, it's like so it's through the mouth. You want to oxygenate the blood, and then after the exhale on the 21st breath, then you start a box breath, which is inhale on 5, hold on 5, exhale on 5, and hold on 5, and then
okay.
So you just keep it like a square. It's what like the Special Forces, Navy SEALs, a lot of these people, they use box breathing to get in focus. It gets you into the parasympathetic system, but you still work with the sympathetic, so you come into focus more, I think.
What are those systems?
You have the autonomic system, which is it makes sure you're breathing, you're digesting, and stuff like that. In that system, we have two systems. We have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic is called fight-flight mode, which most people know, and then the parasympathetic is rest and digest. So and the thing is that it's called the autonomic nerve system, but the thing is that the only thing that can help controlling that is the breathing.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
So you can. That's also with athletes. You would like to, like in Danish, you call it spændingsregulering. So your level of tension
regulation.
Yeah, tension regulation maybe. Yeah. So at some point, usually most athletes they would like to come down a little bit before they go in, like people for an exam would usually like take some deep breaths and then really slow it down to get into the parasympathetic system. And then you could also do the opposite and get more like, so you get psyched and ready to push whatever you're going to do. So it depends where you are and who you are and how much you want to play for it. I think the most important thing you should know about breathing is that you can actually regulate your feelings in a way so you stop reacting and more like you can think about a situation, you can pose in a good way, and you can talk calmly back. So, for example, we talked about your kid last time, and when it was crying, the panic, you're like, oh, and the baby just absorbs that. And it's the same with people around you. So if you can stay connected and calm in that situation, it might be hard still, but you would be able to react in a calm way instead of like just reacting out of your feelings.
Yeah, being aware of why you're feeling it is almost like the only thing you need to do.
Yes, exactly.
As soon as you think that, then
exactly
you're aware of why.
Exactly, and if you take a breath also, then you give a pause to actually listen to what the other person are saying.
Yeah. And
then you can actually meet them instead of most of us are sitting and just, okay, and this is what I think, right? And so.
I think for me personally, the times when I get the most tense are in dialogues with people. And not often, but if it were to happen, it would be in an argument or an uncomfortable discussion about something where you disagree. And it is exactly that. Yeah. It's like as soon as you think about and become aware about the fact that you're already thinking about the next thing you want to say, and you're actually not listening to what they're saying. It's almost like the whole thing is just changed right there, because now you can actually because you want the other person to shut up, but really you need to you can't get them to shut up. Nope. So you got to, I guess, breathe your way through it first, and then they'll almost mirror you, because it would be so weird for you to suddenly calm down and then for them not to do the same as well. It's like, I feel like that's like a natural instinct almost.
It is, and it's because it's emotions. So usually you come out from an emotion and you want them to understand something.
Yeah, understand.
But I think the first thing when you go into a conversation, we're taking a turn here, but I think a point is that do you want, if you come to me and talk, what do you want to for me just to listen to what you say, and you need to tell these things because then you'll feel better? Or are you coming and you want to convince me about something? Or do you come to me and ask about something that you will think you might understand, but you're not sure and you want to try to understand it more?
Yeah. That's
3 totally different dialogues.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing is figuring out, why am I starting this conversation? What am I getting out of it? I think another thing is to slow down. Your breathing automatically slows down your speaking also. And then in the breathing, you get pauses also where the other person gets a chance to actually maybe something they've been thinking about and they want to put into it. And then I think a very important thing is that you actually want to listen and try to understand the other person. And I think that's the main thing in a lot of our discussions is that we're not really interested in understanding the other person. We want the other person to listen to what I say and understand what I'm saying.
Yes. That's what I meant by, it's like you've got to do it first, because you can't get the other person to do it first.
Exactly.
They might, but you might wait a long time. Yeah. So as soon as that person feels like you are genuinely trying to understand them, it's only natural to reciprocate it a little bit.
And it's so simple again, because there's written books about this, but it's like, I think first of all, it's like a connection. So if I'm here with my phone and I'm checking because my son just wrote me and stuff like that, Do you feel like I really want you in that situation? No. So that's the first thing, is actually conscious being here, that you want to talk to that person.
Yeah.
The other thing in it, I think, is like sometimes you can just say, I hear you, Mads, and I understand, or I hear you, but I'm not quite sure what you mean about it. Or asking into, do you want my opinion? Are we disagreeing or discussing? So asking some question, and I think especially giving acknowledging that what you're saying is okay.
Yeah,
and it's
good.
Your feelings, and it's not necessarily something I've done. And I think that's a big point, is that we often like sit and get this feeling about, I'm getting guilty in this. So if you're telling me that this and this and this, usually you tell me to change something. So when you do that and you react like that, Mads, it really pisses me off, and I think you're stupid. And if you did like that and that, then it would be a lot better. I don't think that would motivate you to change anything. But if I came and told you, Mads, when you do that, this is how I feel. I just get sad, and I get like my stomach and I don't really know how to react back, because the feeling I get is I get kind of a feeling of rage.
Yeah.
But it's just my feelings, and I don't know why it happens. But you're doing this. Then I think you would think more about it, because I'm keeping it on my court.
Yeah, you are. I'm immediately like, what can I do?
Yeah, exactly. Can I help? So I think that's a lot about the conversations we have, is if we were better to meet each other. And you know these people where you meet them and they just keep shouting you right up in the face, right? And you can just try. I practice in saying, okay, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna leave, because when I was younger, I always threw myself into these things, and it's just, I've never gotten anything out of it but sadness.
Yeah, that's a good. I think you have to learn a couple of times that it doesn't lead to anything.
Never.
I mean, we have a good rule, because we had like a disagreement about a film that I liked and he didn't, and it turned into this huge thing. But it highlighted certain things about the way we were communicating, that since then we came up with this rule that if we find ourselves in another situation like that one of us can say like a safe word almost, say turtle. And if someone says that, you immediately have to both stop talking for 10 minutes. And all you have to do for the next 10 minutes is, in whatever way you want to, figure out how to best repeat back what the other person is trying to say to you, either written or you can just think about it. And then after 10 minutes, someone goes first and says, this is what I think you're trying to say. And you get to say it. And you don't move on until the other person says, yes, that's what I'm trying to say. So because you're not actually aware of what the other person is trying to say. So you'll say, I think you're saying that, this, and this, and be like, yes, the first two things, but the third thing is the thing I'm trying to say is not what I'm saying. Exactly. Now try to repeat it again. And then once they've gotten it, then it's my turn to say the other way around. And then almost end it there. And we haven't actually done it yet. But I think just thinking about it was enough.
Yeah, exactly. And that's consciousness. And I think that's a great example. And and I think it's a great point also, because it's like, there's so many people, just like me, saying all these things we think are clever. But I think the best thing that could happen to everybody was that we started getting conscious about it ourselves. And then if we keep it simple, I think it's not so complicated as we do stuff. So again, like I started to say, if you look at nature, look at a child, how they do it. We talk about all these alpha brains and where it's good to be, and I think it's called theta brains, where children live, and they're almost all the time happy. And if they're not, it's like they're crying because they shit their pants or they're super hungry or something like that.
It's very in the moment.
It is. It is.
It's good.
And I just think it would be so cool being there. And I was talking to some teachers the other day who I was teaching, and I said, I think it's so sad that we have a system that where we send them to school to learn all these things, and we forget all these human basic things that would help us learn so much better. So we've set a system where they come in, and if you take them in their kindergarten or first grade and you ask a question, they would just there would be 10 fingers on each kid. They would jump up of the chairs. They would say, take me. I want to say something. I have something to say to this. Same question, 6th grade. There would be, maybe, I'm not sure. And you totally took out all the joy of learning from these children.
Yeah.
And I think if we could keep that, I think we could evolve a lot, because then we would look at these things, breathing, how we have our conversation with each other and stuff like that. So if we were more patient with that, I think we could build a totally new system where we were a lot better of taking care of each other, because we were better taking care of ourselves. Make sense?
Yeah. I'm very interested in the moment about. I mean, they're labeled as alternative schooling methods, but I always feel like the word alternative immediately makes people go like, oh, it's like a weird thing. But it's basic. I think it's called Montessori schooling, which is the whole principle is that you let the child say what they want to do and go off of what they are interested in, and you facilitate that. It's very much about providing an environment in which they can learn and explore themselves. So there's no like classes where now we sit down and we all learn about this. Like if they want to, they can get. I don't know that much about it. I'm starting to read a book about it, but I think the point is to emphasize the natural interest that children have in learning, that they want to learn. That's like the most rewarding thing ever. And so just facilitating that and let them be interested in whatever it is they're interested in, and then they will have a joy for learning.
Exactly.
I feel like I lost the joy for learning in school,
and
I've only gotten it back afterwards.
Me too.
So I'm very passionate about that.
Exactly. And it's a very important thing, I think. I said it yesterday. It's the same as dogs, because I have a dog and I walk him. Most people are like, he's super cool and like him and stuff like that. But a lot of dog owners, they're like, my dog doesn't like other dogs. And I'm like, no, you don't like other dogs. Of some reason, you think your dog is not. I think you could take 10,000 dogs, put them on a field, and in 10 minutes, they would have found a hierarchy and they would find their way. I think it's the same with children. You would very fast they would figure out a way if to reason this in a good way, if grown-ups just like guided them instead of saying what they have to do. I think a lot of the reasons why we are like we are is, for example, men, is if you take kids up to like 12, 13, 14, they have like, they hug each other, they hang out, they can cuddle, they can do all these things. And then there's a shift. And a lot of children, it's getting better, but a lot of children are getting like, you can't cry, you have to be a man, and so on. And you can't be a mom's boy, but it's super cool to be a daddy's girl or a mom's girl, and girls it's fine, they can cry and they can talk about feelings and all these things. Then we put boys into a place where 99% play video games and they're super violent, and it's like, smack your bitch up, kill, and so on. And then the girls get dolls and stuff like that. And then we wonder why we have a hard time meeting later in life. So I think all these things, if we start connecting more to ourselves, we would figure out that we actually are the same in so many ways. And we complete each other as humans, men and women, but all together. And I think I really believe that that the breathing is the key for all these things, to reconnect to ourselves, because what it does for me, at least, I try to find all these ways to become a better person. And I had a good heart, but I wasn't a good person. I was on the streets, I was fighting crime, all these things when I was younger. And then I found climbing, which helped me. Then I found meditation, which helped me even more. Then movement and all these communities and some people. But it was first when I started really working with the breath that I actually really, really made some changes and connected deeply to some things that I never found or thought about before. So I think it would be a unique. I think in 10 years we'll see it explode like yoga has.
Yeah. Specifically breathing as like a separate thing.
Yes. You can heal yourself. You can lose weight. You can regulate your feelings. You can control your anger. You can all these things. There was this study at some point at I can't remember, but a high school in the States, in an area of crime and mostly colored people. And in the school, they took the kids out. And they took a mask, and there was a front on the mask and the back side on the mask. And on the front, they should write, what is the mask you put on when you go to school and you pass the streets and all these dudes selling drugs or whatever, when you take the bus. And they was like happy, friendly, funny, all these positive, mostly positive things. Then they asked them to turn the mask and say, what's behind this on the inside? And the three most common things, which was like 75-80% of all the kids, was anger, frustration, and fear. So I think just it says a lot about how we live is we have a mask on, and behind that, we feel lonely, angry, fearful, and all these things. And of course, we meet each other that way. And a lot of people go to a psychologist and stuff like that, not saying that that's not good, but breathing is free. It's easy. You can do it anywhere. So I think that's one reason why we here in the West are so bad at it, because nobody really talked about it, and it's always been alternative. That's what also I wanted when you said the alternative always sounds a little bit bad, but it's kind of funny that we call things alternative. For example, like Ayurveda, Indian philosophy and medicine, or Chinese medicine, which have existed for like maybe 4,000 or 5,000 years. And then we call that alternative, and our medicine is like what, plus 100 years? So,
well, I think for me the word, actually let me just start the camera. For me, I think the word alternative is actually used to describe too many different things, and that for me the word alternative means something that is scientific and something that doesn't have a super solid scientific grounding. And so that is where I feel like the opinion is, well, if it's alternative, it must mean it's not been studied or as much, and that the research isn't as solid, for example. That's just where I feel like the word alternative
I hear you. I don't totally agree, because sometimes it's been studied by Indian philosophy in thousands of years, and they tried this again and again and again and again and again. But in the West, we want some instrument to tell me something about this before it actually works. I think you should turn it around, or not you, but just we should turn it around and think about this. It's like spirituality. It's like being spiritual is a very thin word for a lot of people, where I think it's so much more.
I agree.
So I think turning it around, and instead of like saying it's alternative because it hasn't been proved, I think we should be more interested in saying, like, if you tried it and it worked and it's not like totally stupid, dangerous, or bad for anybody else, then that's fine. I don't think we need all those answers we're looking for, because sometimes it confuses us more than it actually gives us. Not saying science is not good, but I just think sometimes it's just good just to do what works.
For you. Yeah.
Yes, for you.
I don't want to say we're running out of time, but I definitely don't think we can cover everything that I wanted to talk about. There are a few things. Maybe you can give your opinion as to which direction we should move in. But there's specifically the movement house that you've talked about a few times. And then maybe we could also go the direction of, I feel like we kind of touched on that, like what your experience is with building powerful habits. I feel like we've kind of touched on that a little bit about, like, I feel like timing was a big thing that you mentioned at one point, that people who want to try and meditate wait too long in the day to do it, and they don't do it at the right time. To me, that kind of stuck a little bit, because I feel like whenever I try and build a new habit, I have to almost do it as the first thing in the morning. Yeah.
I think it's important. It's like technique training in anything. You would put that early in, because when you're tired, you don't learn the technique.
Right.
So I just think it's a good way to start your mornings anyway. It's not because you couldn't do anything in the evening. I do it often. I go to a meeting. I would sit in my car 5 minutes before, just close my eyes and just breathe and empty out my thoughts. And then I come calm into the meeting instead of running in there in the last second. If I'm late, I could choose to take 2 minutes anyways, because if I'm 5 or 7 minutes late, it's not going to make the big difference. So I would rather come in there calm and in a good mood than stressing around.
Yeah.
So, but I think for most people it would be a really good idea to start in bed, breathe a few times, then go out, get some water, do a little bit of movement, just because your body is a little stiff in the morning. And then sit down and do your breathing meditation. I think that's the good way to do it. Then I think it's also about science, and I've said this for a long time before, but science is saying it now, and they might have said it long before me, but I've just started hearing about it like a few last years. But a habit takes like 90 days, so 3 months. So if you really want something, I think the first thing is figuring out why.
Yeah.
And then figuring out what it gives you, because we think it's about willpower. So if I want to start something or stop something, people always talk about, it's my willpower. I have to be strong in that. It's in the front cortex, and it's the first thing that closes down when you get stressed, and that's your willpower. So it's the first thing that locks down. So you need to figure out what is the reward system. So when you take a hit of that cigarette and you really get something good out of it, if you want to stop smoking that, you need consciously to sit down and then light your cigarette. So if somebody came to me and said, I would like to stop to smoke, all right, then smoke this cigarette, but do it super consciously. Try to smell it, feel it. All these things. I would swear nobody, if they really, really taste and feel it, and then I don't think they could say this really tastes good. I think a pastry from the bakery tastes better, or a good steak or whatever like that. So you need to put something else into that rewards you, so you can fill that void. So I think that's the first thing to figure out. Why do I want to start a new habit? And is there something I want to get rid of in the same time? So you kind of swap them out. So I think it's a lot about being conscious and then doing it every day for a period. And some people come and say to me, for example, with meditation, I don't feel a difference. Fine. It takes time to tap into that. You might have unwillingly, but like I don't really believe in this. This is too weird, and I can't see my muscles grow, or because we're used to getting something out of whatever we do.
Some
so
kind of
you go to
result.
you go to work, you get money for it. You go training, you get bigger muscles or better cardio or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So we're used to getting something right away, and these things, I think you get something right away.
Yeah.
But it takes time again.
I think, specifically with meditation, I can relate to it, is that, yes, you definitely get something straight away. But maybe there's like almost like a dip in that, like a week in. And that's the hard part. And then it kind of comes back. So it's like you get the immediate reward and you're like, yes, this is good. I feel focused. I feel like conscious. I feel like my day's better. And then after a week, or, you know, however long that might be, it like kind of starts to fade a little bit. And you're like, oh, where is it? And it's not as rewarding. Yeah. And then it's easy to give up or to stop the habit. Whereas I would assume that if you continued, you would start to tap into some much deeper feelings of focus and get much higher rewards, but that there is that like dip. Do you have any advice for how to get through something like that?
Willpower.
That's good though, because I think but people say, oh, it's not all about willpower, but there is an element of that.
There is. And I think also it's commitment and saying you want to, but it's like a lot of the time with my breath work, it's not like I get something immediately out of it, but I just, or my swimming in the winter time, it gives me a kick and stuff like that, so I can feel it, of course, but it's not something like I'm saying, okay, this is changing my day totally. But I just know it's good on the long run. So I think that's for me one thing is like I don't think like right now, even though I talk a lot about don't be in the future, don't be in the past, be in the present now. But in these ways, it's just I just do it because on the long run, I just know it's gonna do better for me. So if I didn't, it seems so much easier sometimes in this world just to say, okay, I'm just gonna go to McDonald's, have pastries, go to the couch, Netflix, and chill. Have a beer, drink, and shout with the other guys. But I just, so many of them just, they seem so sad and behind it or not behind it. And I just think these things are things where you're just working on a balance in life. And I think that's the key word in everything is I'm seeking balance. I'm seeking balance of the good and the bad and just being. So it doesn't have to be these high peaks or low peaks, but it's just nice to be here as much as possible. So I think it's about believing in that this is a good thing. That's also why you have to take the responsibility. You have to write that contract with me if I coach you, where you say, yes, I want to do this, because it's not, I'm not going to make you do it. I can help you, but you need to do that.
I think the thing that I'm getting is the you also have to know what it is. So you said you have to believe in it.
Yes.
Which a big part of that would be knowing the benefits and knowing what happens. Because your friend might come and tell you, oh, like you should try fasting. It has all these benefits. And you're like, oh, that sounds good. And then you decide to try it, and then you forget about what the benefits actually are. Yeah. And you just think about the things that are bad.
Yep. And we have a tendency of thinking everything is super fun in the beginning, and then it's like, it's the same. So it's not, but it can seem the same to sit and meditate or breathe, and I do this every day, and even maybe twice or three times a day, but and that can just after a few weeks maybe seem endlessly and why and I'm actually in a hurry. So if I just like came out, and then I could do my work faster, and then I could go to the movies.
Yeah.
But I just think it's overall you'll see a difference, and that's the main thing for me. I talk to other people that meditate and do all these things, and a lot of them have big experiences with it. I've only once I had like a feeling of leaving my body and having this kind of psychedelic experience just off breathing. But mostly it's just like I can see that I've changed for the better. I feel better. I feel like I'm more in control over me than I was 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, and only a little bit, and like a little bit at a time, right?
There's two things I know, Mads, in this life. One is I'm going to die, and two, I'm never going to finish this work. So I just think it's something that I seek to become the best possible me I can become. Oh. And I've just learned that patience is the way. There's no quick fix for these things. It takes time. And every time you think you're there will come something new that you have to work with. So, but I'm super proud of where I've moved myself to, and I think it's been a interesting journey, and it's been super hard. And I had many times where I've been meditating for a long while, and then I stopped, and then I picked it up again.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's a super important thing, because it's kind of funny actually when I think about it, because if you start to tennis or football or any other kind of sport, right? Climbing for you guys, you come out there and you learn some things, but you don't succeed, right? You fail a lot. What do? You do it again, right? So you need to practice this. But with meditation and breathing, I think it's so simple. So people think about it. It's so simple. So if they fail once in changing, they want to do these things. Yeah. It's like, oh, I can't meditate, so I'm just going to stop anyway. Yeah. Or I can't really feel the difference right now, so I'm going to stop anyways. I think that's a big part of it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So I think it's like faith in Christianity or Muhammad or whatever, Buddhism. It's I guess nobody's actually seen God. So you really have a faith in there's something if you really believe in this. I think it's the same thing. You need to have faith in something you can't see and feel necessarily right now, but during time you will be. And that's why one thing is super important for me when I coach people is they have a logbook they use for different things. But one of the things is just writing progress, because often we don't see how much progress we have. I see it every year with these sports academy students, where they don't see and feel that they really move, but then after like 2-3 months we've been working, they like, wow, this is crazy. I just talked to this guy and he climbed for a year and he asked me about beta. So I think it's something we're not very good at seeing. We actually, because it's always small steps in the beginning. So a mix between willpower and believing and having a vision about why do you want to fast, why do you want to start breathing. And then in the beginning, for my sake, was just like I believed somebody that told me that breathing would be really good. I had no idea what it was, the what kind of system, and why should I breathe? I'm breathing fine. I think that's a strength when I teach, because I've been there. So I know these feelings, but I also know that the change are there. And then I think also we expect things. And I think in meditating and breathing, never expect anything, because it's going to be different from time to time. Sometimes you get something, sometimes you get less. So I said in the beginning there was 3 things for breath work with me, and I only mentioned the first one, so I just round this up maybe with the 2 other ones. But the one is the daily practice. Yeah. Then I have one which is like stress and anxiety. So in situations where I feel stressed, anxious, or something like that, then there's different breathing patterns that really can help you. too, for you guys and the listeners here, could be like, I like 4, 4, 6, 4. So you inhale on 4 and hold for 6, and exhale for 4. But it could also be 2, 7, 8. So fast inhale, hold for 7, and exhale for 8. And that means that you fast tap into the sympathetic. You're still there. A breath hold is that's where especially the monkey mind and everything comes out. Is like nothing is happening. There's stillness. So it's like, what's going on? I need to say something. There's going, and then you really tap into the parasympathetic system on the long exhale. So that's the second part. Working with these things, using it. It could also be for an athlete to get up in gear. So you have different breathing patterns there. And then there's the transformational breathing, where you really want to dig into emotions that's stuck in the body. This is the alchemy of breath. It's the Wim Hof breathing, and so on. And typically, no matter what I've tried, it's always this kind of rolling breath. Like I showed in the beginning, like, and then in different tempo. And then you have breath holding during that. So, and I would say the 2 first ones you can just play with anybody.
Yeah.
The last one, I would be careful. I would always find a breath facilitator. Yeah. And I would, if I'm in doubt in any way, I would seek a doctor and talk to him about if you have asthma or other things that could be a problem, because you really go deep. Yeah. I worked with like a soldier 5 times in Afghanistan, not a long time ago. And he came to me because he had a post-traumatic stress, and we were working with that. And we had like 3 sessions, just like slow breathing, and we talked a lot. He had a lot of things he wanted to talk about. And then I asked if he wanted to dive into these breathing things. And the first time we dove in, and he was like, wow, that's crazy. And he had like a physical experience. And the second time, in half an hour, he was like weeping like a small baby, and he couldn't stop again. And he was like crying and crying and crying. And the next day, he wrote me a text and said that was the first time in his life he cried since he was a child. He couldn't remember himself crying.
Wow!
But that was the first time he'd cried ever. And he talked to like psychologists and all these people that try to help him open up for these things. And the second thing he wrote. And that's also because you can actually breathe yourself out of overweight. And the funny thing he wrote was that he took the biggest dump of his life, and he hadn't done that for 5 years because of stress and stuff like that. Yeah,
I've seen some pretty crazy videos of some like Wim Hof breathing retreats.
Yeah,
where people are like freaking out.
Yep, it's
pretty
crazy.
Intense.
And I think in that, it's also, again, the point is that don't expect anything, because it's like it can come, and sometimes you start. I've talked to people where it's like, but what do you think you were releasing here, because you were crying a lot or screaming or whatever? I have no idea.
All right.
And you might not have an idea. The body knows when to let go. And that's the magic, I think, is that you can keep it simple and small, but you can also like really push it and do crazy things with it. So that's there's more to it, but that's like the 3 main things I do. I have a daily practice, pretty simple. Sometimes I go deeper with it. I do my own transformational breath, which takes about between 15 minutes to 1 hour maximum, maybe. And I do short breath holds, so it's like kind of a mix of different things. So that's where I am. I'm just playing around what I think works for me. And that's what a lot of these things are. It's rebirthing, transformational breath, Wim Hof, and so on. It's just like, it's the same basic recipe of this rolling breath.
For anyone listening who wants to maybe go out and research this a little bit more, do you have any like go-to resources like books or websites or YouTube channels or anywhere that you would recommend?
There's so much, and again, it's what I think. What language you can tap into to No Gravity? There's some there.
Oh yeah.
Yep. There's
NoGravity.com.
Yep. No Gravity. And but I like right now I'm looking at a guy called Brian McKenzie, and it's also because that's a part we haven't talked about at all. I'll just mention it. But with athletes, it's like what you can do to push an athlete to be able to do a lot more just by breathing through the nose. It amazes me. And a person that does a lot of this, there's Buteyko breathing, which has been a lot in over asthma. And that's really old. It's a Russian system, but there's this, I think he's from Ireland, called Patrick McEwen, which works out of this, but it's very technical and it's a very limited structure, but there's some really good stuff in there also. Then there's breathology, which can be interesting also. It's he's a free diver that started that. I think alchemy of breath is interesting also. But I checked a lot of these things out. There's Breathe Smart. So there's so much, and it's impossible to say because it's again you will like something and you'll like something else, and I might like a third thing, and then we meet up at some point and we figure out, oh, this is fantastic for a period, and then you jump out. I've been all over because it depends where I am, but there's things I stick to, and again I would advocate for the simple. Keep it simple. Start being conscious. Every time you can think about taking a breath through your nose and out through your nose, do it. See how much can you bike out to blocks and walls when you're going climbing or beta boulders or wherever you're going. Can you do that with your mouth closed all the way? So
and focus on the breathing.
Yep. And if you want to take that on, try to tape your mouth at nighttime.
That's good.
Try it.
Challenge.
It's a challenge, and I would be and I would be very surprised if you don't wake up with a very different feeling. Most people mouth breathe at night, and that means you let a lot more oxygen out than if you do it through your nose.
I know you have to get going soon, so I'm gonna have to wrap it up.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it goes quickly.
Oh my God. That's 1.5 hours? Oh shit. And we didn't even talk about the movement house.
I know, but this is the good thing because we can end it here. You're starting your own podcast in the new year.
We talked about it,
We're gonna help you start a podcast.
Yes.
So hopefully we can discuss those things on that podcast.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because I have some rapid fire questions that I wanted to give you, but we don't have time now, so we'll do that.
If it's fast ones,
no.
We do that next time.
They're just like in the middle range. There, it takes a little bit too long to get into it. But you mentioned your website. What's your Instagram? We'll link the Instagram down below.
It's No Gravity DK, and my website is nogravity.dk.
Yeah.
So Instagram is just without the dot.
Yeah.
And then I have the Facebook, No Gravity Climbing and Movement.
And very soon there will be the No Gravity podcast, where you can get super deep into all this stuff that Esben talks about.
So that's the dream, at least. So yep,
that's the plan.
That's the plan. Yes.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on again. We look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you for letting me come one more time, and I loved it. I'm really this time. I thought it was fast last time, but I'm in shock that we just spent 1.5 hours. I thought there were like half an hour left at least.
Well, I mean, it's 1 hour and 20 minutes, but it's 5:30 because we started 10 minutes later.
We have to have like kind of a warning lamp or something like that.
Well, I got the timer here.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to. I have so much I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, there is. Well, we can meet in Burning Boat and have a talk, or like you said, in the new year we'll start out the No Gravity.
Yeah,
and
I can't wait for that.
Then talk about the house. Also because you guys are involved in it, so that's part of the dream is making this happen for a lot of people.
And just for our listeners, this podcast is made possible by our sponsors on Patreon. If you want to help support the podcast, you can use the link below and help us out there. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time on the Burning Boat Show.